Hey, St. Matt's Youth, Aaron here. This morning's devotion comes from 1 John 3, verse 1. See what great love the Father has lavished on us, that we should be called children of God. And that is what we are. You may not have heard, but very excitingly, Nick and Bella got engaged on the weekend. It's massive news, right? I was with Nick on Monday night, and as he told me in Tasman that he was going to do it on Saturday, I was super excited. I knew it was a big deal. In fact, I let out an emphatic, "What? Mate, that's hectic. It's crazy." And when they posted on Saturday afternoon that they had gotten engaged, everyone on Facebook was blowing up. Intellectually, they knew it was a big deal, but also in their hearts, they knew it was a massive deal. Nick and Bella were getting engaged, planning to get married for life. In the same way, John in 1 John 3, 1 tells us that a big deal has happened. A massive deal. And this massive deal is that we've been called the title, Children of God. John, in the first word of verse 1, uses the word see, which in other translations is translated as behold. Because John literally wanted his readers to have a look and check out the magnificent title that they had been given. In fact, in the NIV translation, there are literally exclamation marks to get people's attention to the fact that it's a big deal, the title they've been given. If you're anything like me though, you sort of know intellectually in your head that it's a big deal you've been called a child of God. But in terms of in your heart, embracing that truth and living it out, it's a whole nother ballgame, isn't it? And so today, really briefly, I just want to look at 3 deep underlying reasons or root causes to the fact that sometimes we have this head and heart disconnect. I want to look at the head problem, the heart problem, and the hands problem, and try and figure out the answer. Well, if we know that it's a big deal being called children of God, how can we let that truth radically transform and alter our lives? So firstly, it's a head problem. I literally had to read this passage so many times, over and over and over. And I think it took so long for that theological truth to get in my head. The fact that God has given me the title, Child of God. We say it a lot, but would you stop and just consider the gloriousness of that title? The fact that God would call you a child of His. Earlier in 1 John, John describes God as light, and a light that has no darkness. Isn't it crazy that God literally calls us, people who belong to Him, the God of light, the God of perfection? And to be a child of God means that we belong to God. Just to be a child of God means that we're from God, that God knows us and that we know Him. I don't know about you, but I love claiming the fact that I know famous people. So this really famous dude in Manly, this famous singer of this famous band called Sons of the East, and I know him, I've met him, and I love telling people, hey, I know this guy Jack, and he knows me. I love claiming it. But how much more as Christians can we claim the fact that God knows us and we know Him? Claim the fact that we belong to Him. We are children of God. The problem, though, I don't think is just intellectual. I also think it's emotional. It's a heart problem. And as I was thinking about this, I think it's a heart problem because I think in our hearts we fail to grasp the fact that we've literally been called this title from God Himself. In our culture, in our day and age, everyone wants to call themselves their own identity. If you want to be a cool surfer, you start wearing cool clothes. You start calling yourself a surfer to others. If you want to be a really smart person, you start calling yourself a nerd. And so we love giving ourselves our own identity. But I think the Christian identity is so much radically different in that God actually calls us children of God. So in the passage it says, see what great love the Father has lavished on us that we should be called children of Him. See, do you notice how God does the calling, not us. And I think one of the big problems for us is we need to emotionally grasp the significance of that. God has spoken out of heaven and said to you, my daughter, my son, you are my child. I know you and you belong to me. So emotionally, I think we need to grasp the significance of that. But not only that, I think we all have a hands problem. And when I say that, I think most of us often determine our identity by what we do or what we don't do. We determine our identity by our successes or our failures, by the things we do well or the things we don't do well. And so what that means is often the Christian life is an ebb and flow. If we're obeying God, we feel good, but if we're not obeying God and we're falling in sin, we feel bad. The crazy thing is, though, John was writing to people who are exactly like this. People who are going in the ups and downs of the Christian life. People who are stumbling, who are falling short. People who are confused as to whether they were even Christians because they were struggling so much with sin and with doubt and with uncertainty. They were uncertain people in an anxious time. And so you too right now might be an uncertain person in an anxious time. The good news is, though, to those people who are struggling, John said, hey, it's not about what you do that determines who you are. But your identity is based on the gift of God, the gift of his love to you. And so in the same way, I want to encourage you, St. Matt's youth. It doesn't matter how much you failed in following Jesus in the COVID break. It doesn't matter how many times you've slipped. It doesn't matter how many times you've doubted, how many times you've been unsure, how many times you've been unproductive. It doesn't matter about what you do or what you will not do. Your identity is solely purchased and given to you from God as a gift from heaven. And your identity stays upon you for your whole entire life and into eternity, no matter what you do. And so don't let your hands determine who you are. Let God has said, determine who you are. Now, as a finish, I love that song, Who You Say I Am, because I think it just brings together all these truths into one. I love the fact that it shows so clearly that our identity isn't based on what others say we are. It isn't based on what we say we are, but it's actually based on what God says we are. And praise be to God that God calls us children of God. I am who you say I am. Not my failures, not my incompleteness, but the God of the universe determines who I am. And that identity is on me for my whole entire life, no matter the ups and downs I may face in the Christian life. And so, brother or sister, I want to encourage you, hold firm onto this truth. You are a child of God, no matter what. And that is a big deal. Let this transform your heart and mind in the times to come. God bless you and keep you.